My cousin got my fiance pregnant before our wedding, and my family wants forgiveness, but I cut ties and started anew far away. This is going to be a long story, and it's just as crazy as it sounds. I'll try to be as succinct as possible, but tea here is a lot to cover here. I don't care if anyone believes this or not, it's so absurd that I need to vent. Also, I am not going to sugarcoat anything, but I will omit any specifics that could identify me to anyone unfamiliar with the scenario. I am 31 years old, and until a few months ago, I was engaged to my 5-year girlfriend, whom I'll call Emily. My younger cousin Jake is 28 and has always been the golden child in our family. To truly grasp the gravity of this betrayal and why it has hit me so hard, I need to give you some background on our family and how we arrived at this point. Growing up, Jake could do no wrong in our parents' eyes, whereas I was continually chastised and punished for minor infractions. This wasn't your average sibling rivalry or subtle favoritism. It was obvious and intense. Jake would break something, and I would be accused. He'd start a fight, and I'd get grounded. If we both got straight A's, he'd get a new gaming console, and I'd get a pat on the back and a reminder to keep it up. Our parents, Mark and Lisa, were constantly making excuses for their actions. Jake's younger, he needs more attention, or you are the older one, you should know better, or Jake's just more sensitive. We have to be careful with him. The relentless assault of false standards and gaslighting made me feel useless and despised in my own home. As we grew older, the preference became more evident. When I was accepted into a good university on a partial scholarship, my parents scarcely recognized it. However, when Jake opted to attend a local community college, they threw him a lavish celebration and bought him a car. Never mind that I had been biking 5 miles each way to my part-time job for years. I moved out as quickly as possible to avoid the toxic environment at home. I supported myself through college by working 2 jobs and taking out loans, while Jake dropped out after 1 semester, claiming college wasn't for him. Our parents wholeheartedly backed his decision, commending him for knowing himself and not conforming to societal expectations. They even financed his string of failed business ventures over the following years. Regardless of how much distance I tried to put between myself and my family, they always found a way to bring me back. Holiday dinners were a nightmare of subtle insults and not-so-subtle comparisons. "Oh, you are still in that entry-level position?" Well, Jake is considering starting another business. He's very entrepreneurial. Never mind that I was establishing a secure career while depleting our parents' retirement money. Despite everything, I tried to keep my relationship with Jake. He was still my cousin after all. However, it was always one-sided. I'd reach out and attempt to connect, but he'd either ignore me or find a way to turn the conversation into a game he could win. If I got promoted, he'd suddenly have a big opportunity coming up. If I started dating someone, he'd inevitably be in a serious relationship. I met Emily while trying to reconnect with Jake. She was a friend of one of his short-lived girlfriends, and we clicked immediately. Emily was everything I wanted in a partner. Brilliant, humorous, kind, and stunningly beautiful. We began dating, and for the first time in my life, I felt truly satisfied and valued. My parents, of course, were not pleased. They made sarcastic remarks about Emily being out of my league and asked what she saw in me. Jake, on the other hand, became quite interested in my life. He was always asking about Emily, wanting to know everything about her. At the moment, I was just relieved that he seemed to care about things in my life. Looking back, I should have noticed the red flags. Emily and I moved in together after a year of dating, and it was fantastic. We both had solid careers, traveled, and discussed the future. I began to believe that just maybe I could have the life I had always desired. A good career, a loving partner, and perhaps children eventually. I proposed to Emily on our 4th anniversary. It was nothing fancy, just a simple dinner at home and a heartfelt speech. I was ecstatic when she said yes. We planned to have a long engagement and spend our time arranging the wedding. We weren't rushing, we had our entire lives ahead of user, so I believed. When we told my family about our engagement, their emotions were diverse, to say the least. My mother put on a fake smile and remarked, "Oh, how nice," in a tone that implied it was anything but. My father grunted and murmured, "Good luck with that," before returning to the television. Jake, however, had the weirdest reaction. He congratulated us, but there was something strange about his smile, most predatory. I dismissed it at the time, attributing it to my own fears. The following year was filled with wedding plans and job stress. Emily and I were both working long hours to save up for the wedding and a down payment on a home. We hadn't seen each other as much as we used to, but I assumed it was simply a phase every relationship goes through. Looking back, I should have seen the signs. Emily grew distant, always on her phone, smiling at texts from people she quickly dismissed as business friends. She began going out more with her friends, arriving home late and smelling of wine and cologne. But I fully trusted her. I never considered that she might be cheating, let alone with my own cousin. Emily began acting strangely a few months ago. She was moody, irritated, and always nauseous. I was excited by the possibility that she might be pregnant. We hadn't tried, but we had discussed the possibility of having children in the future. I began to plan how I would help her, thinking of nursery colors and baby names. Then one night, she sat me down with tears in her eyes and delivered the bomb. She was pregnant, but it was not mine. I was stunned. We hadn't been intimate in a while due to our hectic schedules, but I never expected her to cheat on me. When I asked who the father was, she broke down and mumbled, "It's Jake." My entire universe came crashing down at that moment. Everything I thought I knew, everything I'd based my existence on, came crumbling down. I could not breathe. I could not think. All I could feel was an overwhelming sense of betrayal and loss. Emily attempted to explain, her words coming out quickly between sobs. Apparently, it began during our engagement party. Jake had approached her and informed her that she was making a mistake by marrying me. He played on her insecurities, telling her she could do better and that he could provide her with everything I couldn't. It wasn't a one-time occurrence. They had been having an affair for months. I kicked Emily out that night. I couldn't bear to look at her or be in the same room with the woman who had deceived me so completely. She begged me to forgive her, explaining that it was a mistake and that she loved me. But all I could think of was how many times she had lied to my face and been with my cousin while wearing the ring I had given her. After Emily left, I contacted Jake. I can't recall what I said. It was all a swirl of wrath and pain. He initially tried to play it casual, claiming it was merely a drunken mistake and had no meaning. But when I questioned him, he became defensive, saying, "Well, maybe if you'd been a better fiance, she wouldn't have come to me." I saw red. I got into my car and headed to his apartment, determined to do something that would make him regret what he said. I am not sure what I was planning to do, but when I arrived, our parents were already there. Jake had apparently called them first, telling them a narrative about Emily seducing him and how sorry he was. And you know what? They believed him. They always do. My mother immediately began lecturing me about forgiveness and family, while my father simply stood there with his arms crossed, looking disappointed in me but not in his beloved Jake. I tried to explain what had actually happened, but they wouldn't listen. They kept telling me that I needed to forgive Jake and support Emily throughout her pregnancy because family comes first. I lost it. Years of pent-up resentment and anger spilled forth. I told them exactly how I felt about their twisted sense of devotion, how they'd always favored Jake over me, and how they'd never taken my side or backed me. I told Jake that he was no longer my cousin and that he had died. I told my parents they could have the son they'd always wanted because they didn't have me. I stormed off, ignoring their cries and pleas. I drove for hours with no destination in mind, only a want to be away from everything and everyone. When I eventually got home, I discovered dozens of missed calls and messages. Emily begged for another opportunity, while Jake alternated between apologies and accusations. The majority, however, came from my parents, who demanded that I grow up and make amends. I ignored them all, rarely eating and sleeping. I called out of work, depleting all of my vacation days. I couldn't face anyone and couldn't handle the prospect of explaining what had happened. I just sat in my apartment, revisiting every detail of my relationship with Emily and every interaction with Jake, trying to figure out where I went wrong. It has been 3 months now. I've relocated to a new apartment, changed my phone number, and begun therapy to deal with all of this, but my family will not give up. Despite my efforts to cut off communication, they continue to intrude in my life. They've begun showing up at my office, attempting to ambush me and push for reconciliation. My mother confronts me in the parking lot, wailing about how I am ripping the family apart, while my father leaves harsh voicemails telling me to man up and forgive Jake. Jake himself has attempted to approach me several times, but I've managed to dodge him thus far. They've even dispatched flying monkeys disguised as extended family members to guilt-trip me into forgiving Jake. Aunts, uncles, and cousins I haven't spoken to in years are suddenly calling, telling me how important family is and how I should let bygones be bygones. It's as if they're in another reality where Jake and Emily made a little mistake rather than a life-altering one. I received a message from Emily yesterday. She is keeping the baby and intends to co-parent with Jake, and guess what? My parents are overjoyed to become grandparents, forgetting the circumstances and the harsh remarks they used to make when Emily was with me. The letter was full of apologies and explanations, including how she and Jake discovered real love through this terrible scenario. She even had the nerve to suggest that she hoped we could all become friends eventually for the sake of the child. I am at my wit's end. Part of me wishes to sever ties altogether and start over somewhere else, perhaps moving to another state, changing my identity, and creating a new life where no one knows about this mess. But another part of me is so outraged that I want to stay and fight to show them how twisted the situation is. I don't know what to do now. The treachery has impacted all aspects of my life. I cannot take being alone with my thoughts. I haven't even considered dating again. The idea of trusting someone like that scares me. I've also lost friends over this, those who believe I should take the high road and reunite with my family, as if I am terrible for refusing to play happy families with the people who have wounded me the most. The idea of Emily and Jake raising a kid together, a child who should have been mine, is like a continual stab in my gut. I understand cognitively that the child is innocent in all of this. It is not the baby's fault that its parents are lying, cheating scumbags. But I can't bring myself to feel good about its existence. My parents have begun to discuss how I should be involved in the child's life, and how I will become an uncle. The concept makes me feel physically ill. How can I look at this youngster and not recognize the ultimate emblem of my cousin's betrayal? So, Reddit, I guess my question is, am I the idiot for refusing to forgive my cousin and ex-fiance? Am I wrong to want to lose relations with my family over this? Any help on how to proceed would be greatly appreciated, as I now feel like I am drowning in a sea of treachery and gaslighting. I apologize for the lengthy post. If you made it this far, I appreciate it. Writing all of this down has been cathartic in a way. I am not sure what I hope to gain from sharing this validation, guidance, or simply the opportunity to scream into the void and have someone, anybody, hear me. Edit. Holy God, this exploded overnight. Thank you all for your help and advice. I am astonished by the response, and it will take me some time to look through all of the comments. However, I wanted to answer a few typical questions. 1. Yes. I have consulted with a lawyer about getting a restraining order against my family. It is currently in progress. 2. I don't intend to have any contact with the baby. It's not the child's fault, but I can't become involved without losing my sanity. 3. For those who have inquired about my job, I have already spoken with HR about the situation. They are aware and supportive, and they have security at the front desk and offered me the option to work from home more frequently. I am grateful for their understanding. 4. Many of you have inquired whether I have contemplated relocating to another city or state. It is definitely something I am thinking about. My company has offices in several other cities, so a transfer may be possible. I am considering the advantages and cons. 5. To those suggesting a DNA test, Emily acknowledged the affair, and the timeline is consistent. I see no reason to suspect the child is not Jake's. Even if it was mine, I doubt I could ever look at that child without thinking about this. 6. I've been overwhelmed by the number of people who have had similar experiences. It's upsetting to realize how widespread this type of betrayal is, but it's also strangely comforting to know that I am not alone. Thank you all for being vulnerable and sharing. 7. To the individual who inquired if I had considered taking legal action against Jake for alienation of affection, I looked into it, but it is not recognized in my state. Even if it were, I don't think I have the energy for a legal battle right now. 8. Several people have noted that Jake's behavior appears narcissistic. I've started reading about narcissistic personality disorder, and much of it rings true. It helps me comprehend, but does not excuse some of his actions. 9. Those who have inquired about Emily's family are as startled and appalled as one could anticipate. They have cut off communication with her and have reached out to offer me their support. It's a minor comfort, but I value it. 10. To the individual who asked if I'd considered having my own children someday, honestly, this entire experience has made me wonder whether I want to have a family at all, but I am trying not to make any major decisions while I analyze everything. I'll keep you updated if anything big happens, but for the time being, my focus is on recovering and moving ahead. Thank you again, Reddit. You have helped more than you realize. Your encouragement and suggestions have given me a lot to think about, and they have truly been a lifeline during this tough time. I may not be able to answer every remark, but please know that I read them all, and they are making me feel less alone. Update. Hello, Reddit. It's been approximately 2 weeks since my previous post, and it has been a full roller coaster. First and foremost, thank you all for your enormous support and suggestions. I never anticipated my post to go so viral, and going through all of your responses has been both upsetting and oddly reassuring. It's disturbing how regular this type of deception is. The last several weeks have been tough, to say the least. Remember how I said I was working on obtaining a restraining order? That evolved into a huge ordeal. My lawyer filed the paperwork, and we had a hearing arranged. I assumed it would be simple given the proof and the ongoing harassment, but I was mistaken. My parents arrived at the court with their own lawyer, some fancy guy in an expensive suit who likely charges more per each hour than I do in a week. They attempted to portray me as the crazy one, claiming I was ripping the family apart over a simple misunderstanding, as if Jake had stumbled and fallen into my fiance. Fortunately, the judge didn't buy it. She issued the restraining order against Jake and my parents, but only after my mother fell into tears in court and my father glared at me as if I had committed murder. The look on Jake's face, however, I swear, if looks could kill, I would be dead. As we were leaving the courthouse, Jake attempted to approach me. My lawyer stepped in between us, reminding him of the newly issued restraining order. Jake merely scoffed and said this wasn't over and that I couldn't hide behind a piece of paper forever. I'd be lying if I claimed those words didn't shake me, but at the very least, I have some legal protection. The job situation has been another nightmare. Remember when I mentioned that my family had been showing up at my workplace? This came to a head last week. I was in a meeting with a customer when my assistant alerted me that my mother was in the lobby and raising a disturbance. Apparently, she had brought a photo album and was attempting to show my coworkers baby images of Jake and me while lamenting about how close her boys used to be. I excused myself from the meeting and went down to where I discovered my mother surrounded by a number of uncomfortable-looking coworkers. She was in the middle of relating a story about how Jake and I used to bathe together as toddlers when she noticed me. She attempted to rush towards me, talking about a baby shower, but I interrupted her. I told her she had to go right away, or I would call the police and have her removed for trespassing and breaking the restraining order. Her expression was as if I had slapped her, but after everything they had put me through, I couldn't bring myself to care. Security let her out, and I had to spend the next hour performing damage control with my employees and coworkers. Fortunately, most of them understood, but I could tell some were wondering what kind of drama I was bringing into the office. But it was the fight with Jake that really threw everything off track. Last Saturday, I was in the gym, trying to let out some of my frustration on the punching bag. I was so into my training that I didn't notice someone approaching me until I heard his voice. I swung around, and there was Jake, smirking at me as if he hadn't just broken the restraining order. He began speaking loudly enough for anyone nearby to hear. I ordered him to go before I contacted the cops, but he laughed and said he'd tell them how I had threatened him and Emily. It wasn't my best moment, but I felt like I finally shouted everything I'd been keeping back. That's when I realized I couldn't stay in this city anymore. That same night, I called my supervisor and informed him that I wanted to transfer to Seattle. He was relieved. To be honest, I believe he was concerned about how all of this drama would affect the company. He promised to expedite the papers, and by the next morning, it was official. I had 2 weeks to collect my belongings and relocate across the nation. My family and social circle were quick to learn about my move. My folks, unsurprisingly, were outraged. They turned up at my place unexpectedly again, breaking the restraining order to try to talk me out of it. My mother was crying, accusing me of abandoning the family, and my father was furious, yelling at me for being selfish and immature. I didn't engage. I simply phoned the police and had them removed for breaking the restraining order. As they were let out, my mother yelled at me that I would regret it, that family was everything, and that I was wasting it. I immediately closed the door and returned to packing. Jake reacted differently. He didn't try to contact me directly, most likely due to the current legal difficulties, but he did write a lengthy message on social media about how some people can't handle seeing others happy and how he and Emily were rising above the hate to focus on their new family. It was definitely intended for me, as he attempted to portray himself as the victim. I'll confess it stung to see how many people liked and commented in his favor, but I reminded myself that their opinion is meaningless because they don't know the truth. Emily's response was the most startling. After our phone talk, she contacted her sister Mia, who had been keeping me updated on Emily and Jake's situation. Apparently, my statements had a greater impact than I had imagined. Mia informed me that Emily had broken down, stating that she realized what she and Jake had done was terrible and was scared of the future. My cousin Amy, bless her, offered to help me pack. She even informed me more about what was going on with the family. Amy told me that my aunt, my mother's sister, had a heated argument with my mother, accusing her of always favoring Jake and pushing me away. My aunt complained that my parents were reaping the consequences of their years of favoritism. I can't say I am not relieved to hear that someone is finally calling them out for their behavior. My lawyer assures me that my move will have no effect on the legal case which is currently pending. We're still pursuing charges against Jake for breaching the restraining order and defending the assault accusations he brought against me. My lawyer seems certain that the judge will see through Jake's arguments, particularly considering his history of breaching the restraining order. The fact that I am going across the nation should also show that I am not a threat to Jake, which may help get his charges dropped. I don't know if I'll post any further updates after this. Part of starting over is putting the past behind, and as helpful as this group has been, I believe it is time for me to move on from revisiting this narrative. I need to focus on creating my new life rather than obsessing over the past. So I believe this is my final update. Wish me luck, Reddit. I've got a whole new life ahead of me in Seattle, and I intend to make the most of it. Thank you so much for staying till the end. If you enjoy our videos, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Have a good day. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories. Ha!